Medical marijuana soon to be legal in New York State as Pope Francis weighs in on legalizing recreational drugs. Thousands of migrant children cross the U.S.-Mexico border. We'll show you what happens when police catch them.
Pope Francis celebrates Mass in a Eucharistic procession starting here at the Basilica of St. John Lateran. I'm Alan Holden, and I'll bring you that story from Rome.
And we visit the workshop of a Christian artist who crafts sacred images in the birthplace of Jesus. Those stories and all your news just ahead on EWTN News Nightly for Friday, June 20th, 2014. Good evening from Washington. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Brian Patrick. Looking at your news now, medical marijuana is a step closer to being used in New York State. Just today, too, Pope Francis criticized the legalization of recreational drugs. Our Jason Calvi joining us now with the story.
Well, Brian, 22 states allow people to use medical marijuana. Now, New York becomes the 23rd, where the state assembly, the state senate today approving the legislation, and the governor also supports the bill.
Supporters of medical marijuana rally at the New York State Capitol. The POP bill is called the Compassionate Care Act. It would allow marijuana for people with 10 diseases, including epilepsy, AIDS, and ALS. The bill doesn't allow marijuana to be smoked or sold as a plant. Supporters of the New York bill say that will keep it from being abused.
My trepidation has always been the risk. This bill virtually eliminates the risk.
The bill would also slap new criminal penalties on those that break the law.
The bill will prevent the possibility of criminals hiding behind medical marijuana.
And at the Vatican today, the Pope just said no to recreational drugs.
Let me state this in the clearest terms possible. The problem of drug use is not solved with drugs. Drugs are evil, and with evil, there can't be retreat or compromises.
The Pope was speaking to law enforcement officers who fight drugs all over the world, and he didn't mince words.
I want to repeat what I've already said on other occasions. No to any type of drug.
The recreational use of marijuana is allowed in Colorado and Washington state. Oregon could vote on recreational usage this year. Uruguay has cleared the way for the legal sale of marijuana cigarettes in pharmacies. The Pope gave an alternative to drugs. He says we have to say yes to life, love, others, education, and greater job opportunities. He says if we say yes to those things, then there will be no room for drugs, alcohol abuse, or other addictions. And at this meeting today, Pope Francis became an honorary agent of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration.
The New York Catholic Conference didn't take a position on medical marijuana, but some medical groups are against it. The California Society of Addiction Medication says the drug has a powerful impact on the brain. They say heavy marijuana usage can lead to addiction, increased risk of schizophrenia, and is linked with other mental problems. The FDA has not approved marijuana as a safe and effective drug. If the New York bill goes into effect after the governor signs it, which he is expected to do, it'll be about 18 months until this law actually goes into effect, Brian.
All right, very interesting. Thank you, Jason. And now some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. People living in Baghdad and other parts of Iraq seem to be divided over whether the security crisis there should be solved diplomatically or with a U.S. military intervention. The Iraqi Prime Minister has asked the U.S. for airstrikes to temper the advance of a militant group known as ISIS. Meanwhile, the spiritual leader of Iraq's Shiite majority called for a new government. This comes a day after President Obama challenged the Prime Minister to create a more inclusive government for Iraq. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is expected to travel to Iraq soon to press the government there to share more power. President Barack Obama is directing the Labor Department to start drafting rules making clear that the Family and Medical Leave Act applies to same-sex couples. The rules would allow gay and lesbian employees to take unpaid leave to care for a sick partner, regardless of where they live in the U.S. The move comes 3 years after the Obama administration stopped defending the Defense of Marriage Act. Well, a priest for just 2 short years, 29-year-old Father Kenneth Walker, was laid to rest today. He was buried in St. Mary's, Kansas, after a massive Christian burial at the nearby Sacred Heart Parish. Father Walker was a member of the priestly fraternity of St. Peter. He was gunned down at his parish rectory last week in Phoenix. The pastor, Father Joseph Terra, was severely beaten in the attack. Police have suspected a suspect in custody. Father Terra is recovering from the serious injuries he suffered in that attack. A Czech professor and government advisor who proposes legalizing euthanasia for children born with birth defects has been forced to resign. He wrote in a recent article that, quote, "It makes no sense to prolong the life of a baby born as a monster." He's also called disabled babies freaks. He said doctors should be allowed to terminate their life without the consent of parents. The head of an organization for the disabled compared the comments to Nazi thinking. Belgium became the first country to allow child euthanasia without any age limit back in February. 12 die and several others are missing after heavy rain and flooding hit the Black Sea port city of Varna in Bulgaria. The flooding was so bad the government has declared a state of emergency. People in the streets are waiting for help and surveying massive damage. Emergency teams have been dispatched to help hundreds cut off from electricity and food. That Balkan area was hit with a month's worth of rain in just 24 hours. A delegation of U.S. Catholic bishops is releasing a joint declaration with Shia Muslims in Iran this week. Together, the religious leaders are condemning the building, stockpiling, and use of weapons of mass destruction. The declaration is the result of talks that took place in March. U.S. Catholic bishops traveled to Iran to meet with ayatollahs, or Muslim clerics, and religious scholars. Their goal? To promote greater understanding and peace between Iranians and Americans. Bishop Denis Madden from the Archdiocese of Baltimore is with us. Your Excellency, thanks for making the trip over to D.C.
Thanks so very much. It's great to be with you.
In March, you made a trip, a pilgrimage perhaps you could call it, with Cardinal McCarrick, with Bishop Pates of Des Moines to Iran. You met with Shia clerics there. We know there's a lot of friction between the Shias and the Sunnis. Could your trip be seen as taking sides in this case?
Yeah, we hope that it wouldn't, because that was surely not our intention. We know there's been a difficult relationship between America and Iran, and so we thought that we would really focus on that and try to improve that relationship as we could by dialoguing together. So that's why we focused more on the Shia.
We also noticed that some Muslim clerics have a much different idea of freedom and than we do. How do you deal with kind of taking sides with some and with others you have to really disagree?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we always try to stress is that we may disagree on things, but we can always speak to each other. And if we really are sincere about our dialogues and about our diplomacy, then we should allow the other person to express their desires. Pope Francis has done this so beautifully and expresses it so well in all of his many talks.
So give us a taste of what it was like to interact with Muslim clerics. How did you relate? On what level did you relate to them?
We met with a number of ayatollahs who were from the Supreme Council of Seminary Teachers in Qom, which is the religious center in Iran. And so it was a wonderful, wonderful meeting. In the very beginning, we came in, I guess as good Americans, we want to get right to it. We knew we were there for a short time. And one of the ayatollahs told us in the beginning, "We don't know you, and you don't know us. So let's find out more about each other." So we spent the first day actually visiting some of their shrines, going to their libraries, going to some of their seminaries.
Was that fruitful?
It was very fruitful. From then on, the program went very, very well.
So would you describe your trip as successful?
I think it was successful, in all humility, at trying to start some things going, planting some seeds. We both agreed at the end of this that we want to meet again, to continue to engage in this kind of a dialogue. So it's the very beginnings of what we hope will be a good relationship.
Bishop Denis Madden from the Archdiocese of Baltimore, thank you for sharing that experience with us.
Thanks so very much. Thank you.
And top conservative politicians delivered faith-based messages to more than 1,000 evangelical leaders in Washington today. The Faith and Freedom Coalition designed the conference to mobilize religious conservative voters ahead of the upcoming midterm elections as well as the 2016 presidential race. The people attending heard from GOP stars like Michelle Bachmann, Chris Christie, and Kentucky Senator Rand Paul.
Back here at home, we have a war being waged. It takes over 1 million lives every year. It's a war against the unborn, and it must end.
Telling remarks considering this favorite among libertarians has downplayed social issues in the past. Pope Francis called for the defense of religious freedom today. He said the persecution of Christians is more serious now than it was in the first centuries of the church. The Pope's remarks came as he received participants in a conference on religious liberty at an Italian university. He said it's troubling that people continue to suffer discrimination, even persecution, for professing their faith. This as the Fortnight for Freedom is set to begin this weekend in the U.S. This year's theme is Freedom to Serve. Many dioceses are focusing on service days to help the poor. The HHS contraception mandate triggered the first Fortnight for Freedom in 2012. The Feast of Corpus Christi is celebrated in most American dioceses on Sunday, but last night the faithful gathered for a papal mass and then a procession through the streets of Rome. It's a tradition that goes back centuries. Our Alan Holdren was there and shows us what it's like.
At the Basilica of St. John Lateran last night for a unique celebration, papal mass on the Feast of the Body and Blood of Christ, a day also known as Corpus Christi, when the Church here in Rome and everywhere celebrates the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. Pope Francis said the body of Christ satiates a hunger for life, love, and eternity.
Fame di amore, fame di eternità.
After Mass, a Francis moment, the Church going out into the streets, the Eucharist taken across Rome. The Corpus Christi procession goes from the Basilica of St. John Lateran to that of St. Mary Major. It's just 1 mile, but along the course you see all of the diversity of the Catholic Church.
We've seen it on TV, we've seen it not in this kind of a perspective, and to be walking along and singing and praying among all these Catholics from all over, and then knowing that straight ahead is the body of Christ. It's a really surreal experience.
We came down to observe and kind of watch from the outside and ended up being involved in the whole thing. So it's very, very powerful.
This year the Pope chose not to walk it, but he was there for the benediction at the end of the procession route, leading native and adopted Romans in adoration of the body of Christ. In Rome, Alan Holdren, EWTN News Nightly.
Coming up, thousands of children are crossing the U.S.-Mexico border on their own. We look inside the warehouses where they're being held. And EWTN is growing again, a new merger that will bring you more news from across the globe. On this Friday evening, thank you for joining us for EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick. Vice President Joe Biden is meeting with Central American leaders, urging them to stop allowing children to cross the U.S.-Mexico border by themselves. The Vice President visited Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. Earlier this week, he was in the Dominican Republic. There he spoke with reporters about the benefits of immigration reform in the U.S. Also this week, President Obama honored a group he calls Champions for Change. They are illegal immigrants who have made positive contributions to their communities. We're joined tonight by Alfonso Aguilar, Executive Director for the Latino Partnership for Conservative Principles. Alfonso, it's good to have you with us. I wonder if you would explain for us this Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program that the administration has.
Well, President Obama, 5 months before the 2012 election, through the Department of Homeland Security, issued an administrative order to stop the deportations of individuals who entered the country illegally when they were minors, the so-called dreamers. President hasn't been able to work with Congress constructively to pass immigration reform, and he didn't do really anything to push immigration reform the first term of his administration. 5 months before the election, he passed this program to benefit those individuals who enter when they were minors. Now, I think it's better than nothing, but the reality about this program is that it doesn't give them legal status. It basically says that they won't be deported. It gives them a document, an employment authorization card, so they can work, but it doesn't give them legal status. They cannot leave for the home country and then re-enter. And frankly, it's really not the way to deal with this issue. We need immigration reform.
Aren't we getting mixed messages from the administration here, recognizing some of these illegal immigrants, warning off others?
You're absolutely right. I think it's great that the administration is having an event to recognize some of these individuals who've contributed to our community and society. But the reality is that what he has done administratively is not a solution. What he should be doing is constructively working with Congress, with Republicans across the aisle, and as president, try to build bipartisan consensus to get something done on immigration. And he hasn't done that. He just gives public speeches. And it's ironic because he keeps talking about comprehensive reform. But frankly, for those of us who follow this issue closely, he hasn't done anything to actively create a consensus in Congress to pass immigration reform.
The House hasn't done anything either. Nothing has happened there.
That is correct.
Don't they carry some of the blame here?
Absolutely. I think both parties are responsible. And I think the issue of immigration has been used politically by both parties to appease and different constituencies on both sides. And that's very sad because at the end, who's paying are undocumented immigrants, the majority of which who don't have criminal records and are good, law-abiding individuals.
So the administration sends the Vice President, Joe Biden, to Latin America to say to the families there, don't send your children, especially unaccompanied, across the border. Is that going to do any good?
Well, not really. I mean, first of all, it's incredible that the administration was not anticipating this. And apparently this is, administration is very incompetent, apparently disconnected of what's happening around them in the globe. I mean, we could have seen this happen. We've seen unaccompanied minors come from Latin America every year for the past 20 years in large numbers. But there has been a surge, specifically from children from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And that's because of the terrible economic situation in those countries and the violence. They could have anticipated this. But again, it goes back to the point of immigration reform. We need to deal with immigration reform, and we need to focus on border security. They keep saying that the border is secure. But look, this year we're going to have up to 60,000 minors enter illegally unaccompanied, and that's a humanitarian crisis.
It is a humanitarian crisis. Talk very briefly about how we can address this with compassion.
Well, look, I think that the way to do this, a lot of these kids are coming here because they miss their parents. And this is something that is not being discussed as part of this story. Their parents leave their home countries to be here in the United States to provide a better future for them. And they send remittances, they send money back home to provide a better future for their children. But these are kids who are under 10 years old.
So they're coming here to be reunited with
their parents. Exactly. So I think the way to do this, to deal with this, is in a way that allows parents, people who want to come here to work, to be able to work, come here, work, and then go back to their home country to be with their children so they can be with their families in their home country, and then re-enter to the United States. What we are missing is a mechanism to facilitate the legal flow of the foreign workers that our economy needs.
All right, we'll have more to discuss on this as this issue is debated. Alfonso Aguilar, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Well, this week we also got the first look at the facilities where unaccompanied immigrant children are held after they're caught crossing the border. Our Wyatt Goolsby takes us inside.
Inside the walls of this facility along the Arizona-Mexico border, at least 1,000 kids, some as young as elementary age. They huddle in foil blankets in a country not their own. Captured by Border Patrol agents, they came here illegally and without an adult to care for them. It's the first public look by immigration officials on what may be the country's fastest-growing immigration problem. Tens of thousands of unaccompanied minors hopping the border, fleeing Mexico and point south.
Children have been fleeing Honduras and El Salvador for a long time, and that's been a steadily increasing number as the situation in those countries deteriorate.
Bill Holston of the Human Rights Initiative advocates for these children. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, nearly 25,000 unaccompanied minors crossed the Mexico border in 2013. So far in 2014, that number has almost doubled to more than 47,000.
Some of these kids have been threatened, some of them have been sexually assaulted, some of them have had their throats slit. They're living with a grandparent. Grandparent says, I can't protect you anymore. You need to go and live with your mom or dad.
So they cross the border and end up in the custody of the federal government. At this detention facility in Brownsville, Texas, children play arts and crafts, surrounded by fences topped with barbed wire. Some may eventually be reunited with friends and family in the States. Others may be transferred to private shelters where they'll wait in a country ill-equipped to handle their needs as it comes to grips with a growing humanitarian crisis. Wyatt Goolsby, EWTN News Nightly.
A troubling story. Thank you, Wyatt. You're watching EWTN News Nightly, and our parent network has taken another bold step in its global expansion. EWTN has acquired its longtime media partner, CNA, Catholic News Agency, and its sister organization, Prensa. There's no cash exchange involved in the deal. EWTN will assume control of all ongoing activities of these two organizations. It's the network's latest move to expand its news presence in the global Catholic digital and multimedia marketplace. Up next, the World Cup field is shrinking with some surprise upsets. An update tonight from Brazil. And in the town where Jesus was born, we meet an artist who is keeping the faith alive through his beautiful work. Thank you for joining us for EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick, and with more than a week into the World Cup now in Brazil, this week surprise upsets and clear frontrunners emerging in that tournament. With high-scoring wins, Chile, the Netherlands, and Colombia have 6 points apiece, the highest standings on the board right now. Home team Brazil and Mexico are leading their group with 4 points each, closely followed by Croatia. France and Switzerland had no trouble against their smaller Latin American foes of Ecuador and Honduras. The Pope's native Argentina is on par with them too. And this Sunday, we'll see if the U.S. can pull ahead of Germany when it plays Portugal. Gerald Imray is covering the Cup for the Associated Press. He's joining us by satellite from Rio. Gerald, Spain's already eliminated. Are you surprised by that?
Well, of course. I think the whole football world is surprised about Spain. Remember, this is a Spain team that's dominated football over the last 6 years. Two-time European champions, World Cup champion last time in South Africa, and they're gone. They're out before the group stage is even over. A huge shock here in Brazil, a huge shock around the football world. And what people are saying now is the end of a reign for Spain, the end of an era for that Spanish team. An amazing story unfolding in front of us here.
What other highlights from the tournament can you share with us so far, briefly?
Well, the story so far is the Netherlands team. They put Spain on their way to that early elimination by beating the world champions 5-1 in their opening game. A fantastic show by the Netherlands team, who look at the moment probably the favourite to take that title from Spain. As I say, they beat Spain 5-1. Unbelievable stuff. There's also, I'll tell you what, the 3 C's that I'm picking here at this World Cup, which are the slight underdogs. But Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, keep an eye on these 3 teams, because we're at a World Cup in South America, and there's been 6 World Cups in South America, and every one of them has been won by a South American team. So watch out. Although Netherlands are the favourites, watch out for those South American teams.
How far do you see the U.S. team going?
Well, look, their game on Sunday is huge. They play Portugal in Manaus. How cool is that, by the way? They're playing in the Amazon here in Brazil. It's a huge game for them. They've beaten Ghana. They've got a big monkey off their back there, because remember, they lost to Ghana the last 2 World Cups. So for the US to beat Ghana, a big monkey off their back, but they've got to play Cristiano Ronaldo and Portugal now, and they have to get something out of that game. It's huge for the US on Sunday, because if they don't get something out of that game, they're going to play Germany in the final group game, and Germany, as we all know, are tough. They beat Portugal 4-0 in their opener. The Germans are good, so the US have to get something from that game. If they do, they've got a chance of going through. Make no mistake, second in Group G. They've got a chance.
And finally, Gerald, before we leave, is there any protest going on there? The government's taken some criticism even from Catholic bishops. What's the atmosphere like there?
Look, remember, this was a troubled World Cup in the build-up over 2 things, the protests and, of course, the readiness of the stadiums. There were some problems with the stadiums, and, of course, millions of people came out on the streets in the last year or so protesting this World Cup. It's been subdued so far, but just last night in Sao Paulo, there was around 2,000 people on the streets there showing their discontent at high prices, particularly when it comes to public transport. So the discontent is still there. It's been pretty subdued by the Brazilian authorities, and they've done well in terms of this World Cup to keep it under control. But the discontent is there, and as we play out this World Cup, we'll have to see whether it shows its head.
The AP's Gerald Imray joining us from Rio tonight. Thank you, Gerald.
Pleasure. Thanks.
And last month, of course, EWTN News Nightly was in the Holy Land with Pope Francis making his historic pilgrimage. Tonight, our Susie Pinto, who was there with our team, takes us back to meet a Christian artist whose family has been creating treasures in their workshop for centuries.
When you think of Bethlehem, you think of the nativity scene. And here at Christmas House, they have many, but they also have lots of other items. They've got rosaries, bowls, crosses, and they even have Noah's Ark.
My name is Jackaman. My family is one of the Roman Catholic Latin families who lived in Bethlehem for hundreds of years. From the period of the Crusaders, they came as stone builders, and they settled and they start to do things to sell pilgrims. We bring the wood from farmers who do pruning for their trees, and we dry this wood and we make out of it nativity sets by using different type of models and tools. Olive wood is a very nice wood. For this, they carve it for the last generations. So I am not even more than the third or fourth generation, for hundreds years generation doing this business. Since we are in Bethlehem, everybody have a dream to have a nativity set or a Christmas ornaments from the birthplace of Jesus. And this is, of course, what is keeping us producing and sending all over the world our products. Pope to visit us, it's a very big visit, and he gave us a very, we are now a very small community in Palestine, and he gave us a big interest. He said he wants to pray with the Christian Palestinian in Bethlehem, and this gives me the feeling that we are important people for the Pope.
And Susie, along with our Paul Fifield and Alan Holdren, brought me back a beautiful gift. This was made by Jack. It's from olive wood, a beautiful Holy Family. What was your favorite memory? What's your most treasured moment from that trip?
Brian, the highlight for me was the papal mass in Manger Square in Bethlehem. The Palestinian Christians were overjoyed to have the Pope there, and you could really feel it in the air. So it was a beautiful occasion to cover.
Well, you captured it and almost took us with you. So thank you for that and for this beautiful gift.
It was my pleasure.
Our Susie Pinto. Well, be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter over the weekend, catch us again anytime on EWTN's YouTube page. We're all back Monday and for all 5 days next week. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, I'm Brian Patrick. Thank you for watching tonight. Have a good weekend and God bless you.